Thornton got a good shot. Passes a little chance. He scores with 1:13 to go.
And for Bates. Bates trying to get around Campbell. Shoots, scores! John Bates. The horn sounds. BU wins the Hockey East tournament.
Ken Rouse shorthanded. In alone on Taylor. Score! Will win the final Bean Pot Championship here at the Garden.
Gets it back to the point. Wood with a shot. He scores! For the national championship for Boston University. It's done.
The 1994-95 Boston University hockey season will always be remembered as a season of champions. Hi, I'm Doug Brown. The Terriers blended talent, leadership, and determination to capture the triple crown of college hockey. In February, a clearly dominant BU squad won its 18th Beanpot Championship with wins over Northeastern University and arch-rival Boston College. In March, in what was to be the last college hockey game played at the old Boston Garden, the Terriers won the Hockey East Championship with a win over upstart Providence College. Then in April, the Terriers won the NCAA title, the National Championship, with a decisive win over the University of Maine. It takes more than great players to win the national championship. It takes commitment and support. Coaches, parents, staff, alumni, and students are all a part of it. That type of support has long been a hallmark of BU hockey. In fact, to really get a sense of the tradition behind this program, you have to go back almost 80 years. A collegiate hockey league, including a team from Boston University, was formed in 1917, and BU played its first official game that season, a 3-1 loss to Boston College. Play began in earnest in the 1920s with about a dozen games per season against local clubs and other Boston area schools. Many of the schools that participated in those early years still have solid programs. Like most hockey from that era, the games were played at the old Boston Arena on St. Botolph Street. But the general public didn't pay too much attention to hockey back then. Sure, there was always a loyal following, but the games were really taken seriously only by the athletes. It was surely a simpler time in college sports. By the late 40s, things had changed. Veterans returning from war were going to college by the thousands on the GI Bill. These highly motivated athletes would form the backbone of the first great BU teams. Jack Kelley played for BU in the late 40s and later coached the team for a decade. He witnessed firsthand the explosion of the Terrier hockey program.
You had a backlog of 4 or 5 years of young men who had come out of high school, gone into the service, had played hockey through high school, and when they came out of the service, 46, 47, you got kind of the cream of the crop who finally were playing hockey at the college level. So college hockey picked up about 2 grades, if you might, as far as the skill level was concerned. And the players were older, more mature. A number of them were married. So they had a lot of things to consider, and they were very serious about getting through college and getting on to their careers.
The powerhouse BU teams of the early 50s were coached by Harry Cleverly. A successful athlete in his own right, Cleverly blended a unique coaching style to motivate this group of veteran recruits.
Well, Harry was very popular with his players. He was a great conditioner. He had a personality that people wanted to play for Harry. He wasn't a disciplinarian, and it would have been tough to be a disciplinarian with so many veterans and people who had just gone through 4 or 5 years doing service period. So Harry was the right guy for the right time, and he was a great athlete at his own time because he had a lot of success at BU as a hockey player and a football player and a baseball player. So he had the credibility of the guys who came through.
Harry Cleverly brought the Terriers to their first appearance in the NCAA Finals in 1950 and brought them back for another shot at the title in 1951. But by this time, those highly motivated GIs were nearing graduation, and the team was in need of the next crop of talented players. They were found close to home.
The high school programs were in full swing then. They had developed and grown. Rinks were coming up all over the place. We were developing a lot of natural talent in throughout the area. But the coaches were out recruiting now, and they were going wherever young players might be. And as more players developed, certainly the good players always seek out the more successful programs. And certainly Boston University has always had reasonable success at the hockey level, and you know, it's an easy program to sell. It was for me anyway when I was coaching.
Throughout the 50s and 60s, Boston University hockey established itself as the Iron of the East. They won the Beanpot Tournament with surprising regularity and dominated the old ECAC. During this period, BU was also establishing a reputation on the national scene. The Terriers appeared in the NCAA tournament 3 times in the 50s and 3 more times in the 60s. Shortly after Jack Kelley took over behind the bench in 1962, he helped recruit a player who would have an unparalleled impact on the program. If you look at the BU Hockey Yearbook from 1965 and read closely the names under freshman pups, you notice a forward from Medford, Mass. By the name of John Parker. This then would be the modest beginning for one of the most distinguished careers in the history of college hockey.
Jackie was a very bright player. He was always like a coach on the ice for me. He understood completely what you wanted him to do, and he was a great player for checking the other team's most potent line. And Jack, in his temperament and his knowledge, with his 2 line mates, did a great job tying down, you know, the more potent lines. But Jackie always showed the talents of being a very, very bright hockey player, and you knew he'd go on to be a good college coach.
Immediately after graduation, Jack Parker began his coaching career at Medford High School. 1 year later, he came back to BU to serve as an assistant to Jack Kelley. Just 1 year after that came this routine release from the BU Sports Information Department. The next link in a chain of BU coaching legends came right before Christmas, 1973.
I think he is, without a doubt, the college coach in all of college hockey today. I mean, I think his peers would recognize him as that.
Jack Parker has coached Boston University to 10 Beanpot championships, 4 ECAC titles, 4 Hockey East titles, and 2 national championships. In the fall of 1995, he recorded his 500th win as coach of the Terriers. Harry Cleverly, Jack Kelley, and now Jack Parker. These men have provided the continuity and the leadership which propels the BU program. There is momentum here that generates great hockey teams year after year. The 1994-95 team was no exception. At the start of the season, it seemed that all of the elements were in place for the Terriers to have a successful year. The team had a solid core of experienced upperclassmen. They had several highly regarded freshmen who were certain to make an early impact. They had unparalleled leadership, and they had strong support on campus. But there was something else that drove this team. There was an intangible, something that sharpened their commitment and focus for the long season. That intangible? Revenge. The object of that revenge? The Lake Superior State Lakers. On April 2nd, 1994, the Terriers suffered a humiliating defeat in the NCAA Finals at the hands of the Lakers. After winning 14 straight, BU collapsed. They were pushed all over the ice. BU trailed by only 1 when the second period began, but the game quickly unraveled.
Strawn now into the zone. He scores! Bill Civic scores! Now Strawn a one-timer. Rebound, score! Score!
By the time it was over, Lake Superior State had humbled Boston University, scoring 9 goals on the way to winning the national title. BU fans from coast to coast all asked the same question. What happened?
If I had a rationale or an answer for that, I'd be way ahead of the game. We were playing as well as we'd played all year long. We've really been on a roll through the playoffs. Played terrific in the semifinals and the quarterfinal games. Great defensively. And then to turn around and do what we did in the final game and have that game get so out of hand so quickly was very disappointing, obviously.
We were really on a good streak going in there. We were playing great hockey, but for some reason we didn't really come to play that night, and we took ourselves out of the game as well. We took too many dumb penalties, and the power play just killed us.
I just told them I felt bad for them. I felt bad for our school, and I felt bad for the uniform, but most importantly, I felt bad for the 20 guys in the dressing room because they had such a terrific year, and for some reason we just unraveled, as I mentioned, in the biggest game of the year.
The clock had run out on BU's championship drive, and the countdown to redemption must have seemed endless. Finally, midnight madness, the team's first official chance to skate together on the ice at Walter Brown Arena. The new season saw the team return healthy with one major exception. All-American goaltender J.P. McCursey was seriously injured in a summertime bicycling accident and would not return to the lineup. J.P. would recover, but he wouldn't play, and his absence would affect the team in several ways.
Oh, a big impact, I think. I think a big impact in that, boy, maybe we're not going to be quite as good as everybody said we're going to be because we're losing our All-American goaltender now. So all of a sudden, those polls might not mean as much. We're going to have to work a little harder, play a little bit better defensively, be a better team all around. We're not going to get bailed out by J.P. McCursey. But when he came back to Boston, it was kind of almost like a stroke victim, you know, just barely getting around and needing a lot of physical rehab and psychological rehab. The effort that he put in and day out just to get back to be a normal student again was an inspiration to the team, I think. Hey, if he can work that hard for what little he's getting out of this, we can work pretty hard for all the glory we're getting out of college hockey.
So behind senior goaltender Derek Herlovsky, BU could finally begin the long road to the top and another shot at the national championship. BU started the season with uncharacteristic pop. And with BU's customary high-octane offense.
Offensive zone. Great shift, centering pass. Grier with the empty net power play goal.
Pablo chance over the line, drops it off for Joubert, scores! The hat trick for Jacques Joubert.
Back for Thornton. Thornton has it. He scores. Puts it in for Joubert. One-timer. Oh, what a shot by LeChance.
Bates out in front. To a chance for Bates and a score.
Grier steps across the line with it. Has Chris O'Sullivan. Grier. O'Sullivan back to Grier. He scores. Bang, bang, bang.
Throughout the early weeks of the season, it seemed the Terriers were playing great hockey. They consistently ranked at or near the top of the national polls and were racking up impressive offensive numbers. But in the midst of this early winning streak, there was still something wrong. Despite the victories, Coach Parker wasn't satisfied with the play of the team. There were many very good offensive hockey teams around the country that didn't have what it takes to win the national championship.
We're tying games 7-7. We're winning games 9-7. We were absolutely inept as a defensive team, and it was mostly our approach. We were trying to get to we were trying to be too forceful on the offensive end and always thinking offense, not really working as hard as we should defensively.
As the midway point of the season approached, Coach Parker waited for a shift in the team's personality, a defining moment. It came at the Mariucci Classic.
Oh, Roush alone in front of the net, drives in the centering pass.
The Mariucci Classic Holiday Tournament is played annually in Minnesota. BU was without several key players who were either injured or playing in the World Junior Tournament. BU advanced to the finals, though, and faced the University of Minnesota in front of a large partisan crowd.
I think that game really gave us an indication that we could be a real good team defensively, that we didn't have to win games by getting a lot of goals. We could control the game in our end and through center ice and take care of opportunities. And when we get Bates and Grier back up front, when we get Kelley back on defense, we're going to be that much better when they all come back.
BU has a 5-1 edge in shots, or they have a 3-on-1 break. They center it, shot in the goal, and the game is over, and BU wins the Mariucci Classic on the goal by Ken Roush, the senior and 3-year letter winner.
The Terriers took the Mariucci with an exciting overtime win, and in the process learned something about themselves. They were now a more confident team. They could rely on depth. But most importantly, BU was taking on a defensive personality. They could now focus on a tournament more dear to their hearts, the Beanpot. If you've forgotten how important and how unique this tournament is, let a Beanpot veteran remind you.
In the Beanpot, it seems anybody on a given night can beat anybody else. It could be the worst team in the league playing the best team in the league, or the second team playing the third team, and it's a coin toss every year, every time out, who's going to win the game. It really is a different atmosphere before, after, during the game, whether you're on the bench, in the locker room between periods. Everybody knows that something's really bragging rights of the city, and there's so much mystique maybe about the tournament that it brings the best out in everybody, I think.
And so, on the first Monday in February, as they have for more than 40 years, the faithful filed in to watch the Beanpot. But this one was special. This was the last Beanpot to be played in the old Boston Garden. In the first round, BU faced Northeastern, and the Huskies scored first.
Checked by Rich Brennan. In from the blue line, Bouchard, backhand, score!
1-0 Northeastern late in the first, but Boston University would strike for 4 in a row.
Tipped and stolen by Wright. Wright offensive end shot save Reynolds off his glove. High far corner, Rauch grabs it. Deep for Sylvia, in front, score! Oh boy! Near point Kelleher shot. Through a deflection in front, Joubert shot save. Rebound score, Bob Luchance. Brennan for Joubert, back to Brennan. Loads the gun, doesn't pull the trigger. Gives it back to Kelleher, shot, score!
BU's offensive juggernaut put on a clinic at the expense of the Huskies. The BU attack peppered the Northeastern net with 41 shots and featured 6 different goal scorers. With the victory, Boston University would advance to the Beanpot Finals and face their ancient rival, Boston College. Emotions always run high in every Beanpot game, but a Beanpot Final against Boston College is in a class all by itself.
Maine's a rival, and Harvard's a rival, and UNH's a rival, but the bottom line is our biggest rival today, 15 years ago, and 15 years from now will always be Boston College, I think.
It was one for the record books, Beanpot 95, as BU would battle for the last pot ever played in the Grand Old Garden. Add to the normal Beanpot atmosphere the emotion of closing the building, and the players' expressions told you all you needed to know about the significance of this game. The sellout Garden crowd got to see Boston University at its best.
In alone on Taylor, score!
Ken Rauch demonstrated that aggressive team defense, putting BU up by 1 with a shorthanded strike. On to the second period, BU buzzing in the Eagle zone. Mike Prendergast sneaks one through from a tough angle. 2-0 BU, and now the Terriers' offense was rolling.
Here comes Chris Drury breaking for BU, has a man in front. Rauch scores!
For Rauch, his second of the night. It was beginning to look like another BU Beanpot blowout. Next, power forward Mike Grier takes a turn. Untouched down the middle, tipping one in. 4-0 BU. The Eagles did manage to get on the board in the second period. Tim Lewis sliding one under Derek Herlovsky. But it wouldn't be enough to inspire a Boston College comeback. In the third period, BU would add a little insurance.
Leaves it for Joubert. In front, Wright scores! Great feed from Jacques Joubert. BU leads 5-1.
The BU offense led the way to this win, but the stingy defense had allowed precious few quality chances for Boston College.
And the siren sounds. Boston University will win the final Beanpot Championship here at the Garden.
Boston University takes its 18th Beanpot Championship. But despite the satisfaction that came with this historic Beanpot win, it was just the beginning for the team. This season, the significance of the Beanpot was as a stepping stone toward further success.
I think that the Beanpot is always a goal of a BU hockey team, and that was in and of itself immediate gratification. It was nice, and but if we'd won the Beanpot and then did what we'd done the year before in the national tournament, then it wouldn't have been much to hang on to.
With the first jewel of the Triple Crown now in the trophy case at Boston University, the team could turn their attention to finishing out the regular season. They did it with a flourish. The Terriers were red hot down the stretch, winning 10 straight. A pleasant surprise by this point was the emergence of the goaltending tandem of freshman Tom Noble and senior Derek Herlovsky. Their solid play may have been the last piece of the puzzle for BU. And the genesis of the team as a defensive workhorse continued. Down the stretch, BU's team defense was just tying opposing teams in knots.
It wasn't just that we were winning games, it was how we were winning them. They were all close games. I don't think anybody felt we played our best hockey in that stretch, but we put together a lot of wins, and we played real well in close games where we could have unraveled, and we didn't. We really kept our poise, which was obviously a good feeling going into the national tournament.
Well, I would say there is no question that our team defense was the key, not only when we were winning, but the whole season. I think that Coach keyed on at the beginning of the season, And by halfway through the season, it seemed like, in terms of defense, everyone was playing well.
BU finished the regular season as Hockey East co-champions, tied in points but holding a slight edge in wins over the University of Maine. It was time to gear up for the Hockey East playoffs. The Terriers had won the league tournament in 1994 and hoped to become the second team in league history to win back-to-back titles. Game 1 of this single elimination 3-game tournament would be the last game of the season played at Walter Brown Arena. BU's first round opponent, Merrimack College. The Terriers get on the board first. Senior Jacques Jobert just throws the puck in front, and it trickles through. Not the prettiest goal of the night, and certainly not the last. The home crowd was in for a great one. Merrimack came right back in the first period. Ryan Mayotte chops one at the net, and it sneaks past Derek Herlovsky. But it didn't take long for BU to respond. Just 21 seconds later, Jobert takes the nifty centering pass from Mike Prendergast and shovels in the backhander for his second of the night and a 2-1 BU lead. With only 18 seconds gone in the second period, Jobert does it again.
This is Bob LaChance over the line, drops it off for Joubert, scores! The hat trick for Jacques Joubert.
Jobert's bullet for his first career hat trick gives BU a 3-1 lead in the second and gives Terrier fans plenty to cheer about. Later in the second, the forechecking of Bob LaChance led to another BU score.
LaChance for Bates and a score!
The shorthanded goal by Sean Bates put BU ahead 4-1. The Merrimack Warriors did their best to stay in the game. Darryl Krause scored once in the second and once in the third, making it 4-3. But the comeback would end there. Boston University captures Game 1 of the tournament, advancing to the semifinal round at Boston Garden. BU's opponent on this night was the UMass Lowell Riverhawks. Game 2 of the tournament saw BU continue its trend of scoring first. Jacques Jobert made it 4 goals in 2 games, giving BU the lead just 24 seconds in. UMass Lowell came right back in the first. With both teams skating a man short, Neil Donovan slides this one under Tom Noble, tying the score at 1. Then, for the first time in the tournament, BU would fall behind. The Riverhawks' Paul Botto scores through a screen. UMass Lowell 2, Boston University 1. But that would be all the scoring the Terriers would allow.
Bates trying to get around Campbell, shoots, scores! Sean Bates whistles one past Craig Lindsay, and we're tied at 2. Bob LaChance down the left side over the line, trying to lead. Sean Bates and scores! Oh, what a goal by Sean Bates! Here's Ken Roush around the D. Centers, scores! Chris Drury! Ken Roush with a beautiful pass for Drury in alone, and it's 4-2 Terriers.
And that would stand as the final. BU advances to the Hockey East Championship game to face Providence College, whose head coach, Paul Pooley, had been an assistant at Lake Superior State. Providence had come on strong late in the season, featuring an aggressive checking style. In the championship game, the Friars strike first.
Sundquist with Green. Quinville coming up. Green looking for Quinville, score! Providence College goes on the scoreboard first.
1-0 Providence. 3 minutes later, the Terriers go to work. Mike Grier powers down the right wing and tries to stuff it home. Ken Roush is on the rebound, slipping it under Bob Bell, and the game is tied at 1. On to the second period, and Grier gets his first goal of the tournament. With a defender hanging on his back, Grier pokes home the rebound of the Chris O'Sullivan shot to give BU the lead. The Providence Friars did not go away quietly, though. Halfway through the second period, Brady Kramer scores on the wrist shot to tie it at 2. After a disappointing start, Providence finished the season with only 2 losses in their last 10 games, and they were now tied late in the Hockey East Championship game. Providence goaltender Bob Bell had backstopped the late season surge. He turned away 40 shots in this game, earning himself the tournament MVP. Despite the deadlock on the scoreboard, BU had a decided edge in play and finally put the game away.
Alone in front, shot by Wright, score! Matt Wright.
Sophomore Matt Wright gets the game winner and in the process becomes the answer to an unusual trivia question. Name the player who scored the last goal in both the final Beanpot game and the final college hockey game ever played in the old Boston Garden? The answer? Boston University's Matt Wright. The Friars had made this one a game, and while a one-goal win in the Hockey East Championship game may not sound very impressive, the game wasn't really as close as the score would indicate.
That game typified what we were doing in the last 6 or 7 games, that we got out, we played well, we were on top of the team we were playing, and then we were able to control the outcome, although not dominate on the scoreboard. And I think that solidified our feeling amongst ourselves that, hey, we're out, you know, we have a little bit more control of our destiny than we think we have.
Winning the Hockey East Championship and pushing their record up to 29-6-3, BU clearly had plenty of momentum. The Terriers could now finally turn their attention to the NCAAs. While BU was advancing to the national tournament, Lake Superior State was winning the CCHA championship and preparing to defend the national title. Would Boston University get another chance against the team that had ended the Terriers' last 2 seasons?
Everybody's watching what's happening with Lake State as far as how well they're playing down the stretch. And now all of a sudden it's a selection process, and NCAA is going to put the brackets in, and lo and behold, they're in our bracket, and lo and behold, we're playing them if they win. So the frame of mind that I had everybody is, you got to be happy with this. You know, if you can't beat Lake State, you don't deserve to be the national champion. At least you're going to play them after a night's rest, and you're going to play them in your own ballpark, so to speak. At least we're going to play in the East.
The site of this long-anticipated game, the Worcester Centrum. Boston University finally gets its grudge match against Lake Superior State. The Centrum crowd was dominated by BU fans, and they'd not be disappointed. Both teams come out fast early, setting the tone. But it would be BU on the board first. Chris Drury snaps this wrister, 1-0 BU. That was all the scoring in the first. And the only scoring in the second would also go to BU.
Shot to score! Kelley for the left point.
2-0 Terriers after 2 periods. The message was loud and clear to the Lakers. Boston University's stifling defense was controlling the game. The Lakers had only 12 shots on goal through 40 minutes. Lake State was unable to set up in the BU zone, unable to get any real offense going. Meanwhile, BU was patient and able to capitalize on their chances.
Here's a not-so-routine save and a score! And a score by Brennan! Boston U breaks into the zone. Kelley goes to the backhand. He scores!
Kelley paced the Terrier attack with his first collegiate hat trick as BU went on to post a 6-2 win over the dreaded Lakers. This, at last, was what everyone had waited for, the end to a year of disappointment and speculation. But for a clearly jubilant BU squad, this was by no means the ultimate goal of the season.
It was a lot of celebration, but we did tone it down a little bit after the game. We knew that we still wanted to win 2 more games before our season was over.
BU would have to wait 5 days for the 1995 NCAA Final Four to get underway at the Providence Civic Center. Ironically, Providence was the site of BU's last national championship back in 1978. In the national semifinals, BU would face the Minnesota Golden Gophers, a team that BU had beaten at the Mariucci Classic back in December. The Civic Center crowd featured a large and vocal BU contingent. That big home crowd and the euphoria carried over from the win against Lake State could have been a recipe for overconfidence. Early in the game, Minnesota held a decided edge in play, and the Terriers were lucky to be down by just 1 goal after the first 20 minutes.
I don't think we were focused for that game. I think that we were, of the 3 NCAA games, we were very much not in control of the Minnesota game. Minnesota had outplayed us the first 2 periods. Minnesota, if you go on a territorial advantage, good opportunities, playing up to one's capabilities, Minnesota should have won that game. We were fortunate that the 3rd period started tied.
BU finally came alive in the 3rd period, scoring 4 unanswered goals and allowing only 6 shots in their own end. It may not have been the controlled, button-down style of play BU had become known for over the past few months, but it was a win, and it moved the team into the NCAA Finals. Meanwhile, the other semifinal game matched Maine against Michigan. After 60 minutes, the score was tied at 3. It would take almost another hour of hockey to decide the outcome. In the 3rd overtime, Maine's Dan Schermerhorn took matters into his own hands. It was the longest game in NCAA tournament history. and it set the stage for the first ever All-Hockey East National Championship game. This now was something very special. Most national championship games are played at a neutral site, but this game was close enough to both schools to feel almost like a home game.
You know, the band's ablaze and everybody's jacked up. And because it's in the East and it's an all-hockey East final, I think people thought there was going to be two real good teams and two arch rivals playing each other. So the fans in both clubs and the college hockey fans themselves were really jacked up, and the building was electric, no question about that.
We were just looking forward to it so much, and you know, the anxiety built up, and you know, just to be back to where we were the year before, and you know, when we had the opportunity to redeem ourselves. It was 12 months later, and you know, all the hard work we had from the, you know, a week after we lost to Lake State, preparing for another national championship game and finally being there was overwhelming.
For the national championship game, Boston University would put their trust in freshman goaltender Tom Noble, while at the other end, Maine would counter with Blair Allison. During the season, Allison led all Hockey East goaltenders with a 2.72 goals against average. The Black Bears, under coach Sean Walsh, had captured the national championship back in 1993 and were hoping to get back to the top. BU scores first. A Steve Thornton power play goal from the faceoff puts BU up by 1. Boston fans who had made the drive to Providence were ready to roll. Boston University and the University of Maine have played one another at least 3 times a season for more than 10 years now. As they say, familiarity breeds contempt. There was clearly no love lost between these rivals, and it showed. In the second period, BU scores twice. It seemed as if the Terriers were about to run away with the title.
Out to Grier, takes the wrist shot. Save Allison, rebound. Another rebound, they score! Chris O'Sullivan.
Less than 2 minutes later, BU captain Jacques Jobert pounces on his own rebound and stakes the Terriers to a 3-goal lead. BU was dominating. The team and their fans could sense it. The Black Bears struggled to make a game of it. They finally got on the board with a late second period goal. Despite a flurry by the Black Bears, BU took a 2-goal lead into the second intermission. As the team returned for the third period, a close look into the eyes of the BU players clearly showed that they weren't about to let this one slip away. Maine kept the pressure on. 31 seconds into the third, the Black Bears score on the power play, cutting the BU lead to 1. But that would be all for the Black Bears. Mike Sylvia takes a sweet backhand pass from Sean Bates to stretch the Terrier lead back to 2. Then on the power play, Chris O'Sullivan swats in a loose puck for his second goal of the night. And bang, BU's lead was back to 3. On the main bench, the Black Bears knew there would be no miracle comeback. After playing a triple overtime semifinal, they were facing a fresh Terrier team. A team on a mission.
Good shot, passes to the chance, he scores with 1:13 to go, and a shorthanded tally will wrap it up at 6-2.
A national TV audience and a sellout crowd watched BU win the national championship. Even more than the big moments, the little things will provide the deeper and more lasting memories.
You know, you look to your left, you look to your right, and you know, when everyone gave their hard work through, you know, not just that game, just the thinking back of the whole season, and you know, everyone sweating together and, you know, practice in, practice out, just showing up to the rink every day with each other and for one goal.
It didn't really kick in. I don't think you're just so excited and happy to win with the group of guys that we had on that team.
I just remember catching the eyes of the seniors and feeling so good for them that this was a lot better than last year, boys, wasn't it? So I think that the memory I have most of the entire situation is the bus ride home from Providence more than anything else. You know, the game was the game, and you're always involved in that, but when it was all said and done and the hoopla was over with in the dressing room, and it was just the team and only the team on the bus ride home. That was probably the most enjoyable 45 minutes I've spent in a long, long time.
Came here, made 3 Final Fours in a row, and we win a tournament, we win the national championship, the Triple Crown. Nothing else to do.
BU wins the national title that eluded them a year earlier. The 1994-95 team now takes its place in the proud tradition of Boston University hockey, and their season will always be remembered as a Triple Crown season of champions.